Hey, I'm Ken Lippold, and I started this thing called AT3, the Alliance for Transatlantic Theological Training. And at AT3, we're obsessed with raising up local church leaders for the post-Christian world. A lot of people ask us, well, what do we mean by post-Christian? Over the next couple minutes, let's talk about post-Christian and how local church leaders could lead thriving churches in the post-Christian world. You've probably heard the phrase post-war Britain, or post-communist Europe, or post-lunch nap time. Well, post just means after or following. So when people say that, they're talking about a time or an era following the war or following communism. But it means a little bit more than just the time that comes after. Think about it like this. One day, we're going to talk about a time post-COVID. Right now, COVID-19 is having a pervading influence on everything we do from morning until night. It influences our work, it influences our food choices, it influences our travel patterns, it even influences our clothing choices. I mean, who wants to be caught dead with a mask that doesn't match their outfit? One day, we hope, COVID-19 will come to an end, and we can leave COVID in the rearview mirror. It won't affect my work, it won't affect my food choices, it won't affect what I wear or my mental state or my relationships. It'll be something that happened in the past. It will be a time of post-COVID. And when we live in a post-COVID era, people will start to react, maybe even reject ways of living, ways of thinking and belief that were so prevalent in the COVID era. Okay, if that's what post means, then let's come back to this post-Christian thing. At its simplest level, post-Christian simply means a time after Christianity had a dominant influence on the culture. Mark Sayers, in his book Disappearing Church, references the work of sociologist Philip Reif. Reif said we should think of cultures in three broad types: first, second, and third cultures. Think of a first culture like pre-war, pre-communism, pre-COVID, or in our case, pre-Christian. A first culture is the culture that existed before the second culture came along. What was the culture like before a new dominant worldview came along and swept the culture? That's first culture. Pre-Christian culture, in its broadest strokes, is the culture before Christianity became the religion of the world's largest empire. That pre-Christian first culture was a culture where there were many gods, and the individual was victim to fate and forces beyond their control. But then comes a second culture. The second culture is a new, dominant worldview that is held by the majority of people within that culture. Or it's the culture created by a world-changing event. For our purposes, Christian culture. And a Christian culture is one where the dominant worldview is shaped by biblical teaching and Christian theology. Even if a person in this culture is not a Christian, their own worldview is heavily dominated by Christian thinking and behaviors. But then comes the third culture. Third cultures exist for the sole purpose of defining themselves against second cultures. In other words, they are intent on deconstructing their former beliefs and worldviews. This is the world we live in right now, a post-Christian culture that is in the process of deconstructing or defining itself against Christianity. This redefinition or deconstruction often starts off as antagonistic towards the second culture beliefs before settling in as indifferent or even ignorant of the second culture's deeply held beliefs. So, what's at the very center of this cultural shift? It has to do with where authority is found. In a Christian culture, all authority belongs to God and is accessed through his inerrant and authoritative word and his church. However, in this post-Christian culture, the only authority is found within the individual, and any authority that challenges or restricts individual autonomy must be deconstructed and redefined. Well, let's go back to Mark Sayers and his definition of post-Christianity. Post-Christianity is not a pre-Christianity. Rather, post-Christianity attempts to move beyond Christianity while simultaneously feasting upon its fruit. Did you catch that? A post-Christian culture wants all the fruit that comes from a Christian culture. It wants justice and fairness and peace and equality, but without the very seed of what brought those things about in the first place, Jesus Christ. Or think of it like a kingdom. What kind of kingdom is a post-Christian culture trying to build? Well, one that looks a lot like a Christian kingdom with Jesus as king. His kingdom is one filled with justice, mercy, fairness, peace, equality. A post-Christian culture wants all of those things, but without the king who introduced those values in the first place. Sayers calls this a kind of Christian revolution minus Christ. So, what should we do in our post-Christian world? Well, we could do what some have tried and treat our post-Christian culture like a pre-Christian culture, but that hasn't worked. Or we could try and go back to a Christian culture, but that ship has sailed. Instead, what if we point people back to the seed? What if we could show people that their longing for justice and mercy and peace and equality is all answered in Jesus? Jesus, who absorbed all injustices as he was unjustly killed on a cross. Jesus, who through his mercy chose to take our punishment on his shoulders. Jesus, who offers us the opportunity to be called his brother and to call his Father our Father. Jesus, who endured the chaos of the cross so that he could give us peace. Now, if we do that, we're offering people both the fruit and the seed of Christianity. Thanks for watching. If you want to learn more about post-Christian culture, why not check out Mark Sayers' book, Disappearing Church? Or, if you want to get training in post-Christian culture, check out our website, www.at3.org, and follow us on Instagram, @at3org.